So it's 11 sedras, which represents Geula. Like I said before, 11 is Geula all the way through. The seventh parsha of the Chumash, which represents Exodus, Geula, and number 11 of the 11, number 7, seventh generation, is all about the building of the Mishkan. Pretty, it hit me hard when I saw that. I was at a bar mitzvah last night. A mitzvah of my grandson last night. Mazel tov. I said it before you. And I'm very tired as a result of the bar mitzvah and there's many other reasons. So I'll share with you some of the things that I could say by the bar mitzvah. Never got to say it, but it was too much dancing and no one wanted to hear me talk. The ADDDD generation. More than 5 seconds. That's it, Rabbi. 10 seconds maximum. So it's interesting that the Zohar writes that the two Kruvim, the Kruvim, two images that were on top of the Aron. Lee?
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Baruch Hashem. Two Kruvim had baby face. They were baby faces, a boy and a girl, because they face each other, which represents God's love of the Jewish people, like a marriage. But it's also a love that connects the little children too. Parents to children, and Hashem shows his love for the Jewish people by having on top of the holiest piece of furniture, in the holiest place, in the holiest temple. Again, so you have Eretz Yisrael, the holiest land. Yerushalayim, the holiest city in the holiest land. The Beis Hamikdash, the holiest location within the holiest city. And the holiest section of the Beis Hamikdash is called Kodesh Kadashim, Holy of Holies. And what's the holiest part of the Kodesh Kadashim? The Aron. On top of the Aron, you have this little boy, little girl, facing each other. Says the Zohar, this is the Kruvim, which Hashem spoke. He spoke right in between the Kruvim. That's where the voice of Hashem spoke. The Shekhinah was revealed over there. Says the Zohar that the two boxes of tefillin, the head tefillin and the hand tefillin, by mitzvah speech, the hand box and the head box are related to the two cherubs that were on top, two images, female, male, that were on top of the Aron. Reb Chaim Vital, a student of the Arizal, writes that you could actually hint it in the very words that talks about the Shekhinah. It says, I make for me a mikdash, v'shachanti b'socham. V'shachanti b'socham. And I will dwell in them. Should have said in it. I will dwell, build for me a mikdash, I will dwell in it. So it says in them. Who's them? Jewish people. But through what do the Jewish people have the ability to create their own sanctuary? By the mem. You see the mem, what it look like? Mem looks like a box of tefillin. Through the tefillin, besoch, through the mem that the boys wear on their head and on their on their arms. This is the equivalent of the cheruvim that were on the Aron. And through the tefillin, God dwells among the Jewish people. So my brother has a whole piece. What about the women? I felt that you were asking that question. And in the article, in that book of his, I didn't bring it here, but I will give it to you on Friday, Mr. Shem, for you to have a Dvar Torah. He explains, I will tell you one thing, that women are Shabbos compared to Shabbos. And on Shabbos, you don't wear tefillin. You don't need to wear tefillin because Shabbos takes the place of tefillin. A lot of things women don't need, but men do need. Get us working. There's a lot we need. We need more mitzvahs than you do. And we have a lot of other issues that we have to take care of through a lot of different mitzvahs. Okay, so tefillin, one of the reasons that women do not put on tefillin is because it's Shabbos. There are exceptions. There was a woman who put on tefillin. Who knows who that was? That's not so 100%. That's a rumor. Who? Could be, but who do we know for sure put on tefillin? Kind of Tanakh woman, very distinguished woman, maybe not so famous, but she was the daughter of someone very, very famous. Ever hear from King Shaul HaMelech? Michal, his daughter Michal, wore tefillin. Says the Gemara in Tractate Eruvin, page 95, I think, or 96. You want to look it up? You have the English. There it says that Michal Bashol put on tefillin.
But she couldn't have children.
I can't hear without my glasses.
She couldn't have children. She had a many soul.
No, doesn't say that. She was a very special young lady, and she put on tefillin. She was able to, but in the general, women are exempt from tefillin because women represent Shabbos, and on Shabbos you're not allowed to put on tefillin. She was an exception to the rule. She was super holy, so even though she's already Shabbos, you go different levels within Shabbos itself. But not every woman has that ability, so therefore women do not put on tefillin. It's not the only reason, but this is one of the reasons. I want to mention one more thing. What else do I want to mention? Yeah. A bar mitzvah is compared to a wedding. Okay, so you go to a bar mitzvah, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Rashbi, and his son became bar mitzvah, and he treated it like a wedding. Why is a bar mitzvah like a wedding? Well, we just explained that the tefillin, which relates to a bar mitzvah, is compared to the kruvim, to the two kruvim, which are male and female, representing a very strong love that exists between Hashem and us. Like he's the chassan, we're the kala. But also, there's another reason. We don't find anywhere in the Torah where it tells you to have a feast, to make a simcha by the bar mitzvah. How come? And one of the answers is because bar mitzvah, when all the Jews became bar and bas mitzvah, when the Torah was given, does it mention anywhere in the Chumash clearly about celebrating Matan Torah? No. It mentions Shavuos. It does not say openly in the Torah when Matan Torah, what day Matan Torah took place. Pesach, it does say Shavuos, Sukkot, it says, but it does not say when the Torah was given. There's no date. Purposely, to teach you that every day you should feel like it's brand new, as if today was the day the Torah was given. Likewise, with the bar mitzvah, one has to feel that this is bar or bas mitzvah. Every day is your bar or bas mitzvah. Feel that Torah is very new. So it's interesting. If Matan Torah is a bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah of every single Jew and Jewess, it's also a wedding. Hashem says, when I gave the Torah, I was betrothed to the Jewish people. Building the Mishkan, that was like coming home. Yichud. But the Torah giving was, the ring ceremony, and that was Har Sinai was compared to a wedding. So it's a bar mitzvah also, and a wedding. So we see the bar mitzvah and wedding seemingly go together. A third explanation says the body and the soul are like male and female. The soul, male, it gives life. The body receives. And they become together, so they're so united. There's such a synthesis that it's incredible. You can't even look at it. You can't even decipher between the two. The body and the soul become one entity. You don't see a person. There's the body and there's the soul. You look at a person, you see a living person. It's one. Likewise, with the Zohar and with male and female, that they come together and they're one in the child and in the children that they father that they give birth to. Lost track of thought. 1 second. Yeah. So, being that the bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah, but bar mitzvah is clearly mentioned, is when does the soul enter into the body? It starts with the bris by a girl when she's born, and it fully enters by her bas mitzvah or his bar mitzvah. The completion where the soul enters the body, full force, that's the bar mitzvah. Soul, body becoming one, bar mitzvah. That's a wedding. The neshama is marrying the body. So every bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah is like a wedding. Thus, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, the Rashbi, rejoiced at his son's bar mitzvah like it was his wedding. Got it? No? Yeah. Okay.
You said that, it says that like, you spoke between the fruiting, like, by the girl. Who said that?
Sorry, which one? boy and girl.
You said the Kruvim, like the statue of the boy and the girl, like Hashem spoke between them.
Yeah.
That was Zohar. Who said that's Zohar?
The Zohar says that the two Kruvim were like are compared to tefillin. The tefillin today are a substitute for the two Kruvim.
Okay.
And also one more thing, which tefillin is the male, which is the female? The Rosh is the male. Men usually are in the heaven, they're in the sky. They're not down to earth, and they operate more cerebral, less emotional. Women are much more emotional. The hand tefillin, women also are more practical. They bring things down to earth in a lot of different ways. So the hand represents the female quality of the tefillin, facing the heart. The heart, the lave, of course, shaykh to female. So in the tefillin, we also have the male and female. Shal Rosh, Shal Yad. Who comes first? Comes Shal Yad first. The Matan Torah, Hashem spoke to the women first. Okay. Now, with Sicha, we started with a powerful Sicha, and we're in the middle of the Sicha. If anyone needs one, we have an extra one here. Just one more. Where's Amy? Amy's not here. Oh, you have one. Okay.
What happened at Sinai? I think there's one over this stuff.
Yeah, because there's one extra over here also. But whoever comes in, Bailey, it's your job to give it a distributor.
What happens at Sinai? Yeah.
What happened at Sinai? What happened?
Next to the black hole. Yes. Nice, yes.
Okay, so let's go over what we discussed. I would like to try to finish this because I'm afraid we won't. The Sicha dealt with a dispute between two great rabbis, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva.
Do you have any extra Rabbi Greenberg?
Yeah.
The one that says the twofold intent.
What?
No, what happened at Sinai?
Okay, these are all a
One second.
twofold intent,
Hold on, it starts at 286 or 274.
286.
Yeah, that's good. That's where we're starting.
What was yours? Sorry.
286.
Oh, it's a continuation. Of
Yeah, it's a continuation of last week, and it's part two of last week's Sicha. 2 weeks ago, we learned the Sicha. It's very long, 20 pages. We went through half, and now I'd like to finish the other half. So the other half starts on page 286, which begins with the words with the title "Twofold Intent." But before we get to the second half, let's summarize quickly what we did in the first half, and that is we mentioned that there was two different disputes between two great rabbis, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel, about what? Anyone remember?
See what they saw at Barcelona.
Yeah. So Rabbi Akiva says it was a great miracle that happened, not a miracle that was a direct consequence of the Torah being given to us, and that is that we saw what we normally only hear about, i.e., what that really means is whatever is less tangible, whatever is more spiritual, it was real to us. Spirituality, godliness became real. And whatever we normally see, i.e., the material world, we looked at it as if it's something distant and foreign. We became foreign to the physical world and close to the spiritual world. That's how Rabbi Akiva says Matan Torah raised us up to a level where we became superhuman. We no longer had the limitations of a normal human being who sees what you normally see, Gashmias, and he only hears about Ruchnias. I just want to mention before we get to the Rabbi Shmuel that the Rebbe had mentioned earlier in the Sicha, there are two things special about where sight or vision differs from audio or what you hear. What are the two differences?
They only hear non-physical, and like you only see physical.
Right.
And
that's the second thing. The first thing
seeing
is
believing.
Seeing is believing. What you see, it leaves no room for any doubts. No one can refute what you saw with all the logic in the world. You'll say, thank you very much, but I saw it. I know it's true. It affects you much deeper. And opposed to what you hear, you can always, I hear you, but you could easily be convinced otherwise if someone else testifies or says what you could not have heard. This makes no sense. How could this person have said, how could you believe that such a thing happened? Just by hearing from a eyewitness, I could prove to you it couldn't have happened. And then you go, really? Maybe you're right. So hearing is not so convincing. It doesn't hit you so deep, doesn't penetrate so deep as sight does. Okay. And then the Rebbe said these two things are interrelated. These two differences between sight and vision and audio, or that which you hear, also means hearing with the mind. What you hear with your ears, what you hear with your mind. I hear you, I understand the concept. The two differences, how it affects us and what object do we see and do we hear are related. Since we are physical beings, therefore we normally see, we relate to very easily, and it's very real to us, that which is in the physical world, tangible. Things that are tangible are real to us because we're tangible, we're physical. Spiritual things are distant from us. That's why we don't see it, we only hear about it. Okay. So that's Rabbi Akiva. What's Rabbi Shmuel said? Rabbi Shmuel is the one who says, no, the Jews did not have their sensories exchanged, mixed. They saw what everyone else normally sees. They were just down-to-earth people. They saw Gashmis and heard Ruchnis. Nothing really changed in terms of their what is their reality. The reality was Gashmis is Gashmis, and that's real. And Ruchnis is a little harder to figure out. They didn't change. So the question is, what's the dynamics then? Then is he saying that Matan Torah didn't do anything to us? Rabbi Akiva, we understand. But what about Rabbi Shmuel? And the answer is, Rabbi Shmuel's view is that the uniqueness of the Torah giving was that the purpose of the Torah being given to us was to experience Hashem within the frame of the multifaceted world of diversity, to be able to remain within your frame and structure, human structure, of seeing what you normally see and hearing what you know. And within that frame of just being a regular human being, they were able, godliness reached them on their home, on their level, on their turf. We were the home team, and we introduced God into our lives. Rather, Rabbi Akiva introducing us into God's life, elevating us, bringing us up to Hashem's domain and turf. Rabbi Shmuel says, no, the bigger chiddush is that Hashem could penetrate. Hashem was one. And we're diverse. You think Hashem is limited to being one? He could come down to earth, and he can also be multifaceted. All the different nuances we see in the world, all the different things we see, are not a contradiction to his oneness. He's all over. He's everywhere. He's multicolored, God. Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva responds, forget about the multicolored. We're higher. We're above all that. Merge into oneness. Let's go up. Let's rise. Rabbi Shmuel says, let's come down. Why did Rabbi Shmuel say what he says? What's the reason for their difference of a view? They're both very holy views, by the way. The Rebbe at the end of the Sicha will say we should try to practice both. But why did Rabbi Akiva feel you gotta rise? And Rabbi Shmuel feels introduce Hashem into your frame, into your limited world. He's not limited in being up there in Shemayim.
Rabbi Akiva was about to, right?
Rabbi Akiva was descended from converts, and he himself was about Judah, correct? And therefore, what was his lifestyle like? He had to break away from his past. He felt limited, confined about where he was and what he was doing. He wasted 40 years of his life, by the way. In fact, he hated, until he was 40, he hated rabbis. He had wrong information. He was, they call disinformation today. He was misinformed, disinformed. He got the wrong idea. He was a good person, which is why his wife, Rachel, fell in love with him. Because he saw how honest he was. He made a mistake, and he made an about-face turnaround. At the age of 40, he started learning whole story in Gemara about that, and he succeeded. Not only did he succeed, the entire Talmud is based on Rabbi Akiva. I'm not going to go through a whole story of Rabbi Akiva, but he succeeded by rising above his, transcending himself, going beyond himself. And we'll see more stories about Rabbi Akiva later on in the Sicha. Okay. So now we have another argument that we mentioned earlier in the Sicha, mentioned last time we learned 2 weeks ago in the Sicha. What is the other dispute between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, and how they're interdependent?
What the Jews said.
Right.
Ishmael says they said.
Wait, be more specific.
Oh, sorry.
Said about what?
Yes.
When Hashem said the 10 Commandments, he was waiting for an answer. He wanted feedback. Lamor, remember the word lamor? Lamor usually means transmit the message to someone else. There's no one else to transmit it to, because you all heard the Torah firsthand. So why is there a word lamor? The answer is, what do you got to say about it? Yes or no? So what does Rabbi Akiva say?
They said yes to positive commandments, yes to negative.
Yes, whatever you say, blank check, we will obey. Rabbi Shmuel says, come on,
Yes. to positive.
show yes for the positive and no for the negative. Do you see any relationship between these two arguments now? I do. Rabbi Akiva is the one who believes that we have to see the oneness in everything. So when you do a mitzvah, what's the common denominator in every mitzvah? Hashem's will. What does he want? What do you gain by that? What kind of vitamin? Every mitzvah is like a different vitamin. It vitalizes a different part of your neshama, just like you have vitamins that are good for different parts of your body. Like vitamin E, good for the skin, and vitamin B is good for the bones, and whatever, D or other. Every vitamin has a different. Likewise, every mitzvah affects the world in a different way, and affects you in a different way. So Rabbi Akiva says, forget about that. What difference does it make? It's Hashem's will. In fact, we say in every bracha has the same beginning. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosah. God has sanctified us with his mitzvahs. It's called a kavana klalit, a general intent. Don't go into specifics. Rabbi Akiva wants you to merge into oneness, rise above all your talents. So therefore he sees, hein. Every mitzvah is, yes, I will obey. Whether it's do not bow to an idol or whether it's keeping Shabbos. Do not murder. Yes, I'm yours, God. You don't want me to murder? I won't murder. And so on. Rabbi Shmuel says, wait a second. We want to appreciate every mitzvah for what it is, its individual characteristic. Yes. Every mitzvah for its individual characteristic. A positive is a positive. Shabbos. I love Shabbos. Shabbos is serene. It's beautiful. I even had an uncle who knew President Johnson back in the 60s, who used to be a senator in Texas. My uncle lived in San Antonio, Texas, and he had a large family and sitting around a Shabbos meal. And this president, before he was president, looked through the window. He was he was a very good friend of my uncle. And he walked into the house and he said, wow, we only wish we had this in our religion. Serenity. Every kid said at Bar Torah, sitting by lights of clock. It was like such unity, such cohesiveness, serenity. Beautiful idea. It's not like we keep it, but this Shabbos does one thing. Tefillin does something else. Tzitzis does something else. Whatever mitzvah, every mitzvah does affects a different part of your psyche. Appreciate that. A positive are all such positives. Then there is the negative. Feel the disgust. Feel the you're supposed to feel that way. Appreciate the no's. Say no to a negative. Say yes to a positive. Be normal. Recognize the differences in a positive and a negative. So Rabbi Shmuel says, God has to come down into our multifaceted world. So we have to appreciate every mitzvah for what it is. It's a positive mitzvah or it's a negative mitzvah. Within positive mitzvahs itself, there are different levels. There are the ones that are chukim, that you can't understand, the ones that are semi-logical, and ones that are completely logical. Every mitzvah is different. Appreciate how colorful Hashem is. He's everywhere. Everywhere. He's inside. He's in our world. He's not asking us to rise above. He's asking us to allow him into our world, to invite him into our world. So therefore, Rabbi Shmuel is the one who says, hein, lav. If it's a hein, a positive mitzvah, show it. Express yourself that way in a positive way. It's a negative mitzvah, express the negativity of sin. Don't feel just one feeling. That's boring. It's interesting to be able to show how Hashem is everywhere, in every single nook and cranny of our lives. But there's a question. When Rabbi Akiva argues with Rabbi Shmuel, what part does he argue with? Which part of the two? Again, everyone agrees that on the positive mitzvah they said hein, right? There's only an argument about the negative. So if I argue with you, I don't have to point out what I agree on. Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva agree that on the positive they answered hein. There's no dispute about that. They only dispute what they responded with a negative. So why did Rabbi Akiva have to, talk so much? He says, no. Al hein, like you say, that I agree with. Al hein, al lav hein. Just say lav hein. Rabbi Shmuel also holds hein. Why mention what you agree upon when you're only supposed to mention what you argue upon? You know what the answer is? I know. I cheated. The answer, well, actually, it's actually understood because Rabbi Shmuel's hein and Rabbi Akiva's hein on the hein also differs. Rabbi Shmuel's hein is, look how great this mitzvah is. Every mitzvah is so beautiful. What's Rabbi Akiva's hein? Blind. Faith. Yes, we will obey. God, we're all yours. Different kind of hein. Rabbi Shmuel's hein is, wow, this mitzvah is so beautiful. It's so colorful, Hashem. Every mitzvah is, I feel different I feel so different when I do every mitzvah. This mitzvah vitalizes my mind, my way of thinking. This vitalizes my emotions. This helps me in my emunah. This helps me in my being able to overcome, tragedies or whatever. Every mitzvah is channeled to a different area of my personality. Beautiful. That's the hein. The hein is the positive, every individual positive element. Rabbi Akiva's hein is not like that. He doesn't recognize the nuances of the positive. Just one general hein. Yes, we will obey. Let's see it inside now. Sicha. First page. A twofold intent. Anyone want to say? Any customers?
To read.
Yeah.
On the
Go for it. Yeah.
On the basis of explanations, we can also understand the sages' different interpretations of the Jews' response to the Ten Commandments. In general, there are two dimensions of mitzvos. A, the factors shared by all mitzvos, their common denominator, that they are all God's commandments. B, the different categories into which mitzvos are placed, and the particulars that characterize each one individually. Every mitzvah brings about a unique aspect of refinement in the person carrying out the mitzvah and the physical entities associated with the performance of every mitzvah individually. Two paths to divine service, and consequently the two patterns of interpretations expressed by Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, respectively, are dependent on which of these two dimensions emphasized. According to Rabbi Shmuel, who maintains that at Sinai the Jews saw what's usually seen and heard what's usually heard, the sense of man's
The zenith of man's.
the zenith of man's spiritual endeavors,
What does zenith mean?
like end.
Like the top, the highest goal, the highest point.
Uh,
Just like you have the abyss, you have the zenith, the highest point of one's accomplishments would be the zenith.
Of man's spiritual endeavors involves drawing down godliness and having it perceived in the world as it exists with all its specific natural structures. Therefore, the Jews' fulfillment of mitzvot should emphasize not only the general commitment of Kabbalah's all, acceptance of the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, pledging to fulfill God's will without reservation, but primarily a commitment to comprehend and dedicate oneself to accomplishing, speaking of a particular dimension of refinement associated with each individual mitzvah.
And committee 7. Therefore,
Rabbi Yishmael maintained that the Jews answered yes to the positive commandments and no to negative ones. They focus on the individual dimension of every mitzvah with regard to the positive mitzvah, the yes, the constructive dimension, the good and the loftiness, and the mitzvahs
that the mitzvahs possess.
and with regard to the negative mitzvahs, no, the adverse aspects of the behaviors repudiated by these prohibitions. By contrast, Rabbi Akiva maintains that the zenith of man's spiritual endeavors involves rising above the world and its limitations. Accordingly, when fulfilling mitzvahs, the emphasis is not on the specific aspects of refinement to which the observance of each particular mitzvah leads and the effect it brings about within the world, but on the person's obedience to the Creator's commands, a feeling that transcends all particular aspects and structures.
You got it. It's the common denominator. Essay, lo saseh, do, not do. You're doing that's what Hashem wants. Overriding all the differences. Hein, yes. I see God, he's seeing the world from God's perspective. From a God's perspective, all the mitzvahs are equal. Where he looks at it. From our perspective, I don't feel the same when I, have a, an inclination to bow to an idol, or when I'm keeping Shabbos and putting on film. The different, you can't compare the feelings. So you answer accordingly. Continue.
Jews answered yes, both the positive and negative commandments. The primary focus was not on the particular aspect of each mitzvah, but on the general dimension, that they are God's commands, which is common to all the mitzvahs. Therefore, they did not differentiate between the positive and negative mitzvahs when responding. They answered with the same yes, whether the command involved performing an action or observing prohibition. They agreed to carry out whatever God commanded.
Now look at footnote 43. On this basis,
On this basis, it can be clarified why Rabbi Akiva also stated that the Jews answered yes to the positive commandments as well. Seemingly, the fundamental difference between his approach and that of Rabbi Ishmael applies to the response given to the negative commandments. That according to Rabbi Akiva, the Jews responded even to the negative commandments in the affirmative.
So why is he mentioning about the positive? He doesn't argue with Rabbi Shmuel about the positive, seemingly, right? So the question is, yeah, go ahead. However,
In truth, Rabbi Akiva's understanding of the yes they answered to the positive commandments also different from Rabbi Ishmael's understanding. According to Rabbi Akiva, the yes is not related to the individual aspects of the given mitzvah, rather it's an affirmation of one's desire to carry out the general dimension common to all of God's commandments.
different kind of yes, a general yes versus a specific yes. So he argues on both points, not just on the loisas on the negative, but also on the positive mitzvahs. That's why you have to repeat both. Okay.
Is this all like, or like the Rebbe explains this in a Sicha, is this all understood? Or not even, okay, probably not, but between Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva, like Rabbi Akiva could just say, yeah, no, they said yes, and they said yes and yes, and Rabbi Ishmael. Like they understand what this means?
They don't understand.
Rabbi Ishmael.
I hope so.
I heard a different
I was
yes.
explaining what they meant.
What is their intention? When they.
I would imagine so. Sometimes the Rebbe explains to Rashi, and it doesn't necessarily mean that Rashi thought about this, but his words are so, all inclusive, because Rashi's words were Ruach HaKodesh, so even things that he didn't even think about himself are there in his words. I believe over here is what the Rebbe is saying. This is what they actually meant in this case. These are Tanoim, don't forget, these are holy people. But very different type of way of expressing holiness. One is rising above, losing your individuality, rising and merging into oneness, or inviting oneness into diversity. Both of them are incredible. Which one is the Iker? So it depends who you are. They're both right. You can't put anyone down. And the Rebbe says we should try to follow both of them, even though we're not on any one of those two levels, to try to work. Certain times we should have a Rabbi Akiva feeling, this rising above the world, not allowing the world to even exist in our minds. And then there's sometimes we have to let Hashem enter into our multifaceted world to find everything that's happening with us and with the world, the connection to Hashem in that event. And they're both important, maybe different times. Rabbi Akiva was one track. He was incredible, that one track. On one track, no, you can't expect anyone to be on that level. He was, as we'll soon see in the Sicha further. Okay, anyways, so let's go further. 288, to express this concept, continue.
To express this concept in different words. The path of divine service advocated by Rabbi Ishmael, path of Siddiqui, and the observance of the mitzvahs, called attention to the commandment itself and its effect on the world at large. Therefore, it recognizes the particular dimension of the mitzvahs and divides them into categories in an inclusive way into two groupings, positive and negative commands.
So he likes to see how the mitzvah affects the world. The world is important in Rabbi Akiva's life. Rabbi Shmuel's life. Rabbi Akiva says, forget about the world. Let's think about God. Forget about the world, how God affects the world. God himself. Why do you have to mention the world when you mention Hashem? Just think about him. Forget about him. Diverge, Lose yourself in Hashem. Don't find yourself with God. Lose yourself in godliness. It's talent. It's not easy to do that. That's the shleimus. Tachlis hashleimus. The ultimate goal for a human being is to become superhuman. Lose your limitation of being just plain human, and merge into the oneness of Hashem. Enter into God's world. By contrast, the path of divine. I'm sorry about that. By contrast,
For how the divine service advocated by Rabbi Akiva, the Shuvah Mesiras Nefesh,
accentuates.
bonding with he who commanded the mitzvahs and carried out his will, responding with an all-encompassing affirmation, a single-minded commitment to the one God.
Okay, 10. Well, who wants to say 10? Anyone? Oh, very good.
To see the yes and the no. The explanation. To explain another aspect of Rabbi Akiva's approach to answering yes to both positive and negative.
Before you go, one more second. I'm sorry. I wanted to mention something important. What you're going to say right now is going to answer another question that's hidden in the footnote. Rabbi Akiva is so all-inclusive. One gigantic yes. God, yes. Blank check. Whatever you say, I'm yours. Then why does he say al hain v'al lav hain? How about just saying al hain v'al lav hain? Why does he mention hain twice? He says on the positive they answered hain, yes. On the negative they answered hain. He could have said much shorter words. He could have said, on the negative, on the positive and the negative, he said Hain. He mentions Hain twice, which now the Rebbe is going to throw in something else. It's not only that Rabbi Akiva had the ability to merge into oneness and see everything as one, just one God, one will, Hashem wants, and I'm here for him. But he can also see the yes within the no. He can see positivity within negativity. And we'll soon see details about that. Go ahead. Sorry.
No worries. By responding yes to the negative commandments, the Jews did more than highlight the common aspect shared by both the positive and negative commandments. The fulfillment of the Creator's will. They also brought out the positive dimension contained within the negative commandments. Even in the substances and actions that the negative commandments forbid, the Jews perceived and felt only the positive, the good and the holiness brought about by observing the negative commandments. The possibility of such perception fuels Rabbi Akiva's approach of seeing what is usually heard and hearing what is usually seen when a person's spiritual state isn't such that he...
Page 290. When you are on Rabbi Akiva's level where you hear what is usually seen, which means he perceives the physicality of the world, not for how we see it. Continue. Page 290 on top. He perceives.
Yes, he perceives the physicality of the world, what is usually seen, which
with utter
detachment due to the distance associated with hearing.
The world is foreign to him. Our perspective of the world is foreign to Rabbi Akiva. Not just is God close, the world out there is not. He doesn't see it the way we see it. He sees it from top down, from Hashem's vantage point. Go ahead. And if you do that, for him, continue.
Yeah. For him, the existence of the world truly has no place. He only appreciates, hears, that it exists because of the proofs the Torah provides. When such a person looks at any entity, all he perceives is the connection that entity shares with the Torah and its ways. When such a person encounters something negative, an entity that is in conflict with holiness, even regarding so severe a negative force as a false deity, something diametrically opposed to the oneness of Hashem, primarily, he does not perceive its negative dimensions, but bad, but rather, principally, he is aware of the positive, the good that can arise. He realizes that this conflicting force makes it possible to carry out Hashem's commandment, you shall not have any other God. This is the intent of responding yes to the negative. This approach of Rabbi Akiva's to factors that appear negative is also reflected in another well-known Talmud.
Before you get to that story, so what is the Rebbe saying here? He's saying that when Rabbi Akiva hears that there are other gods that you shall not worship, wow, we have another mitzvah. He sees the positive. He sees how you can serve Hashem. Thanks to the Avodah Zarah, we can serve Hashem. Story with the Hamas Machshmon barbarians. Due to them, many of the hostages have taken on mitzvahs. Like this one girl who kept Shabbos and Yontif, and they gave her a siddur. That's not a miracle. I don't know what is a miracle. They gave her a siddur, and they allowed her. They even said they respect her more than they would respect those that are not religious. Anyways, it's thanks to them. I mean, not thanking them, but so if you're Rabbi Akiva, you're able to see the positive in every single thing that happens in the world. And there's a mitzvah not to worship idols. I'm thankful that there's idols in the world, that we can perform a mitzvah of not bowing to them. So he sees that aspect. He doesn't see them. He doesn't see the negative. He has X-ray vision. He can see through the negative straight to the positive. Here's the story.
Sometime after the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash, Rabbi Akiva and several other sages saw Shvat depart from the site of the Holy of Holies. The other sages wept, overcome by sadness because of the very place of which it is written. A non-priest who approaches shall die. Foxes no roam.
Coming out the Kodesh HaKadoshim, a fox doesn't look too good. It makes you cry, you know? Rabbi Akiva laughed.
However, Rabbi Akiva was joyful. When the other sages asked him, "Why are you laughing?" he explained to them that witnessing the fulfillment of the prophecy of Uriah regarding the destruction of Yerushalayim and the Beit HaMikdash, that Zion would be plowed like a field, encouraged him to confidently await the fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy. Old men and old women shall yet sit in the steep streets of Yerushalayim. Even in such an extremely negative situation, seeing a fox depart from the sight of the Holy of Holies, Rabbi Akiva did not perceive the negative, the undesirable dimension, but rather the positive. How what he saw reaffirmed the ultimate fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy.
Okay. Now, there's much more to it, but I want to just try to see if we can get to the end of the Sicha. There's another interesting phenomenon here that the Rebbe is going to introduce to us. Let me ask you a question. Within the Rabbi Akiva's two incredible aspects of the sensory, your senses being mixed up, which one is a greater level? Let me ask you a question. Which is greater? To be able to see spirituality, relate to it in a very real way, or to look at Gashmis as something alien and distant? Where do you have to be at a higher level? I think you might answer the wrong answer. Huh? Yes. Oh, you got the right answer. Oh, God. Surprised me. Yes. Here's what's going on here. There's going to be a child version of Rabbi Akiva and a child version of Rabbi Shmuel. The immature, the beginner's level of Rabbi Akiva, because Rashi, interestingly, does not bring both parts of Rabbi Akiva. He only brings the Royanes Hanishma. The Jews saw what you normally heard. They saw spirituality. He does not quote, they heard about the world. Because a 5-year-old kid, you can't expect a 5-year-old kid. You can expect a 5-year-old kid to feel God is real. And he'll say Shema, he'll like it. Just like you have to get up and get dressed and eat. You gotta daven. And he can't live without it. You can train a kid like that. I've seen kids like this, believe it or not. I've seen kids that have I should have a feeling that unbelievable. They're so connected. But can you expect a little kid to say, there's no Gashmis, there's no world? There's both. He has two realities. There's the Gashmis is real. So he sees what you normally see, but he also sees what you normally only hear about. He's able to have a child version of Rabbi Akiva. So Rashi, who's learning Chumash, only brings one half of Rabbi Akiva. He brings the Royanes Hanishma, that we can see what you normally hear, i.e., relate to Ruchnius, the spirituality, and to godliness in a very real way. But Rashi does not quote the other half, that the Jews were able to look at the Gashmistic world and not believe in it. It looked far and distant. How's that possible? What do you mean? The table's not here? What? Kid will get confused. It's not possible for a child, to look at food. I have to eat food? Why? That he has to work on himself to go down to eat or go to sleep. That's beyond the expectation of a child. This is what I was going to say in the next piece of the Sicha. Want to continue? What do you want to?
Sure.
You're more than welcome to send it very well. I like the fact that you didn't say God, but you mentioned Hashem.
Didn't even know.
I noticed. Go ahead.
As mentioned above, in his commentary on the Torah, Rashi quotes only the first clause of Rabbi Akiva's description of the events in Sinai. They saw what was usually heard, and does not mention that they heard what was usually seen. Although the two states are interrelated, as explained above, Rashi omits the second clause. The rationale for this omission can be explained as follows. As mentioned in the several occasions, first and foremost, Rashi composed a commentary to present.
Shuto shel mikra
Thank you. Prosciutto shel mikra,
means a simple understanding of the pasuk. Straightforward meaning.
the straightforward meaning of the Torah verse, so that even a 5-year-old beginning his Torah study could understand what the Torah is saying. While the two approaches and modes of divine service described above, that of Rabbi Yishmael's and the divine service
Of tzaddikim.
and that of Rabbi Akiva, the divine service of Bali Tshuva, are appropriate for Jews who are in the midst of their divine service. Rashi composed his commentary even for the 5-year-old. And such a child must begin serving Hashem in a manner of china, education, thus giving the first step to cultivating and fostering personal development.
At this stage, 292.
At this stage, a child cannot be asked to do more than to see what is usually heard. He should train himself, starting with the divine service, with the directive stated at the beginning of the first section of Shulchan Aruch Chaim, which also serves as an introduction for the entire Shulchan Aruch.
What is that? I place God.
I place Hashem before me at all times.
Wait, okay, go ahead.
The implication of the verse is that the recognition of godliness, something that is usually heard, i.e., above our ordinary conceptual framework, should be seen. To express the concept, borrowing Hasidic terminology, elokus, godliness, should be
Bipchitus.
peach.
Bipchitus, it means the obvious. Bipchitus. Of course, simple. That Hashem exists is simple. Bipshitos is Hebrew. Grasp, in other words, he says, grasp simply as the person's natural perception.
The above also holds true that for an adult who, in terms of his divine service, is on the level of a 5-year-old beginning his Torah studies.
Not all 5-year-old, not all simple people are 5. You can have a person who's 7 years old and he's like a 5-year-old in his Yiddishkeit. Such a person must also.
Such a person must also begin serving Hashem and carrying out the process through his Hannah, education, training himself and developing his spiritual potential. At this early stage, such beginners cannot be asked to function at the level of hearing what is usually seen. It is impossible to ask them not to feed the matters of this world, to relate to material reality with a distance merely hearing it. To again borrow Hasidic terminology, to regard ordinary existence,
Chachus.
Yeah.
What's his chachus? Chadash means new. Look at the world as something, really? It's new to me. Like news, your news, something out of the ordinary. Behis chachus is a Hebrew word. Chadash means new. Behis chachus means something that is novel, a novelty, as a novelty. He actually translates behis chachus as a novelty. But even if he is able to
see what is usually heard, i.e., relate to and internalize spiritual matters. That word again.
In a very clear way.
Yeah.
Simply.
As his ordinary natural perception, material entities will nevertheless still be important for him. Indeed, he will also regard them Bepshitas. Speaking straightforwardly, a 5-year-old beginning.
Page 293.
Beginning is.
It should be his. It's an H.
Beginning his Torah study, it understands simply that he must study the Torah and observe mitzvahs. Indeed, this is so straightforward to him that he does not have to force himself to do this. On the other hand, at the same time, material matters, eating, drinking, and the like, also come simply, for they are entirely natural to him. He is not yet at the stage that he can bring himself to not to be concerned about material matters at all and to be involved in them solely for the sake of heaven.
Hard to ask a child when you eat, will change your mind. Eating, leave me alone. I'm eating. Give me time off. But when he learns and when he's davening, he can daven like a real holy person. But you can't expect a kid or anyone who's even though he's not at the age of a child, but he is of the maturity of a child in terms of Yiddishkeit, to be at that level where he should look at at the world as if look at what he does in the worldly things he gets involved in as something that is purely godly. I mean, right now I'm eating. Time for everything. So that's what the Rebbe is saying here. So therefore, Rashi can't quote the second part of Rabbi Akiva, which is Shoymen es Hanira. It's the child level of Rabbi Akiva. But I was going to soon explain, there's also 2 levels of Rabbi Shmuel. There's the advanced Rabbi Shmuel level and the child level of Rabbi Shmuel. Now let me ask you the question. What's Rabbi Shmuel's chiddush? Introduce God into a world where everything is normal. Which would be a bigger chiddush for Rabbi Shmuel? Which is the bigger, for God to enter into a person who sees Gashmias, or God to enter into a state of mind who hears about Ruchnias and questions whether it even exists? What? The second one or the first one? A person who is very materialistic, who relates to Gashmias in a very real way, or a person who does not relate at all to anything that's spiritual and has questions about God's existence. That's much lower level. Yeah. If Rabbi Shmuel wants to introduce Hashem, can be introduced into a mindset that would normally have doubts about God's existence, even into that frame of mind. To bring Hashem, introduce God into a world where you could question his existence, and yet even that kind of person should say, I believe. That's a much bigger accomplishment. But you don't want a child to introduce doubts. You don't want a child, you can't ask of a child to go ahead and try to believe that Hashem is everywhere and introduce questions on God and then give the answer. You don't want to go ahead and give a child all kinds of questions about God's existence, have him understand the questions, and then give him the answer. That's very dangerous. If you try to ask questions that, skeptics have about Hashem, all the people that believe in evolution, try to introduce that to a child and say, but let me refute it. why even bring up the question? Why bring up the subject? He's not mature enough. An adult who's matured in seeing Hashem and everything, you can explain what questions people might have on God's existence, all these, whatever, and prove how they're wrong. You don't want to introduce question marks on the truth with a child. So you can't, Rabbi Shmuel's child level will not introduce God into a frame of mind that doesn't have a clear belief and looks at God and looks at spirituality as something foreign. It's too dangerous to introduce that level to the child, then hope he will find Hashem within that frame. So that's why you could also say Rashi is referring to Rabbi Shmuel's view. He's a Rabbi Shmuel fan, Rashi, but he's the child version of Rabbi Shmuel. Royanas Anishma. Royanas Anishma, meaning that we can only introduce Hashem into one frame, not to both frames. So that Rebbe will explain later on in the next part of the Sicha, the next stretch of the Sicha.
On this basis,
Yeah, go ahead.
on this basis, we can understand why.
Page 94.
In his commentary on the Torah, Rashi mentions merely the fact that the Jews saw what is usually heard and not that they heard what is usually seen. In the initial stages of divine service, both what is usually heard, i.e. spiritual matters, and also physical matters, what is usually seen are both seen, accepted, Pshitas, I will get that word eventually, simply as one's ordinary natural perception. Keep going?
Yeah.
For this reason, in his commentary, Rashi interprets the word lemor as Rabbi Yishmael does, stating that the Jews answered yes to the positive commandments and no to the negative ones. Through, he interprets the phrase saw the sounds as Rabbi Akiva does, as explained above, and both explanations of Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva are interdependent.
So how does Rashi seem to get half Rabbi Akiva, half Rabbi Shmuel? The answer is, nevertheless, here, Rashi
quotes the interpretation of Rabbi Yishmael because for a person in his initial stages of divine service, the outward appearance of the world is still significant for him. When he sees false deities and other forbidden entities, he sees their negative dimensions, the no, i.e., he is still not able to go beyond the limitations of the world and see only the positive when exposed to negative things.
Yeah, don't try to tell a child it's wonderful that there's idolatry in the world because you have another mitzvah to stay away from it. Just tell him to stay away from it. Focus with him on how negative idolatry is or anything that is, not eating kosher is very negative. Don't try to find positive in the negative. He's not mature enough. Yeah.
I feel like that's easy to do if they're never exposed to it, like in our own homes. But a lot of us have relatives who don't keep Torah and mitzvahs,
Right.
and might unfortunately worship idols. So,
well, that's the same thing as child. If they're new to Yiddishkeit, they're a child. Never said that.
but we want our children to have a relationship with our family, so.
Same, but if you try to have a relationship with and have an effect on family members, first of all, it's not a good idea anyways to usually want to have an outsider. But even if you want to try to introduce these ideas to someone who's beginner in their Yiddishkeit, as the Rebbe said, beginner doesn't only mean a child, it means anyone who's like a child in terms of how they're used to it. They're new to it. If they're new to it, then you focus on positive is positive and negative is negative. You don't want to mix them up and try to be fancy over there.
Do we explain to our children, like, these relatives who don't keep how we keep? They aren't bad people, they're just, know much less than you do.
Right.
Otherwise, like, they're introducing these ideas that we're trying not to introduce to them.
Right.
Am I making sense?
Yeah. Kind of. There's a very long footnote here. About a pasuk in Tanakh in Shoftim. You take a look at Shoftim, footnote 58. I don't have time to go through this one. It's a very long one, and a very interesting footnote about the story with Manoach and his wife, who saw a malach, and she didn't have any children for a while. This is the birth of Shimshon HaGibor, and I'm going to let you look it up for yourself, see if you can figure it out. You have to have, I have actually English here. It's good to get this. This is very good. This has the whole Tanakh in English. I have it at home. It's worthwhile. It's very interesting. It has all the commentary. It has Rashi in English and all the other commentaries. He throws in, and he said that besides the pasuk in English, we also have. So if you look up Shoftim, chapter 13, you will see the whole story with the birth of Shimshon. And the Rebbe says that he can tie in the story, how they responded when they saw, when he went crazy when the Malach, when he realized that the great person who was telling them that they're going to have a child, he realized this was not a regular person, it was a Malach, and the Malach just went up in flames. He said, we're going to die. We just saw God. And his wife said, no, take it easy. If Hashem blesses with children, it's a sign we're not going to die. So the Rebbe explains, not because the reason why he was so convinced that they wouldn't die is not because otherwise the child couldn't have been born. The child could still be born, and then she dies and he dies. It doesn't prove anything. But rather, you have to see the whole story here. So it's a very interesting footnote, and the Rebbe ties the Sicha in with the story here in Tanakh. So on your own, if you have an English version of Shoftim chapter 13, I would look it up. Very interesting. The Rebbe explains the verse of the footnote here. Okay, pretty much at the end. So the Sicha goes one step further. At the very end of the Sicha, the Rebbe says, page 296, he says that we should also try to, different times in our lives, try to attain Rabbi Akiva's version of what the zenith, what the greatness of Matan Torah is, and then also try to sometimes take Rabbi Shmuel's level. So the both of them are holy. Let's stop over here. I mean, I want to just Zahav Akesef L'Nechoshes. The building of the Mishkan was through gold, silver, and copper. So it says copper refers to people that are not yet people that need to do tshuva. Kesef refers to tzaddikim, the silver, and gold to bali tshuva. Gold is intense. Gold is red, hot, intense, passionate. And silver is white, smooth, nice. Silver are tzaddikim. The choshes are those that need to do tshuva. So the Rebbe says like this. I know it's no ring while we're talking. The Rebbe says interestingly that there are three different views of the order of the Chumash. When did the Chet Egel happen? Before the donations, before God commanded the Jews to donate to the Mishkan. So according to one opinion, the donations and the actual, the commandment to donate and the actual donations took place before the Chet Egel. So these were given. The commandment was given to tzaddikim who had not yet sinned, to people who have not yet sinned. So we now know there are groups of Jews that are compared to Kesef, whom the command to build the Mishkan was given to. But there's another opinion that says just the opposite. Parshas Truma, which is the time when Hashem tells Moshe about the mitzvah to donate, and even when the Jews did donate, all that took place, both of them, even the commandment to donate and the actual donations took place after the Chet Egel. So Parshas Truma is not in chronological order. Parshas Truma belongs after Parshas Kisisa. 2 weeks from now, we'll be reading about the Chet Egel. This parsha really happened chronologically after the Chet Egel. So to whom did God command to build a Mishkan? To Bali Tshuva. Because after the Chet Egel, they did Tshuva. But then there's a third opinion that says that when Hashem told Moshe to tell the Jews to donate, that was before the Egel. But the actual donation, in the end of the Chumash, when they actually did donate, Moshe gave over the message to the Jews, that took place after the Egel. But the command was given to those who in the interim sinned. That means the commandment didn't become nullified. The order, Hashem's order to Moshe to tell the Jews to donate to the Mishkan continued on through the Chet Egel, which means even people that have sinned and have not yet done tshuva were also, during the actual sin, they were also still under the command of building the Mishkan. So we have three different views. One saying that the command was given to tzaddikim, one to Bali Tshuva, and one to those that were still in the midst of sinning. Zahav, I want to tell you something else. The three ways to give tzedakah. Zahav, Zayin Hey Bei, stands for Zeh Hanotein Bari. Sometimes a person gets very sick, and that's when you start feeling, I need to do a mitzvah. Otherwise, maybe God is angry at me, maybe I'm going to die. Or whatever. But how about when you give tzedakah when you're healthy? Zahav is when you give tzedakah when you're healthy. Zeh Hanotein Bari. Zayin stands for Zeh. This is Hey Hanosein, that gives. Buddy, when you're healthy. What's the kesef level? Kesef level is that when you're afraid of something might happen, you're afraid, you're worried about something that might happen, you give tzedakah to prevent it from happening. Nechoshen stands for a person who's already sick. Nesinas chola she'omer tnu. The actual word nechoshen stands for the giving of a sick person who says, I'm sick. He wants to give tzedakah to save his life. He's very ill. So you have three levels. A person who's completely healthy, a person who is healthy, but he's worried about what might happen to him or her. And the third level, you already are sick. Corresponds to the three different types of Zohar, Kesef, and Nechoshen. Have a wonderful day. I'm out of here.
Yeah. I'm not actually. Yeah, it's hard up there. Yeah, actually, I don't think it. Okay, we'll buy it. Okay.